Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Celeste Fraser. I know a lot of you. Thanks for coming on a rainy night. And those of you at home, welcome. Thanks for coming. We are the Estes Valley Watershed Coalition. I know a lot of you know that. And we are the caretakers of the forest, wildlife, and waters in town. And now you're one of us. So if you gave us donations, thank you again very much. And if not, join us, become a member. We ask for donations because we get grants to do our work. We're doing a lot of fire mitigation right now. And in that process, a lot of the foundations and state and federal agencies require matching funds. And that's why we need donations. So anyway, many thanks for coming. Tonight, I want to introduce you to Dr. Greg Florant. He's a professor from CSU, and he has really fun stories to tell about marmots and groundhogs and little critters. And I'll tell you, for those of you who live in Estes, I just saw a big fat marmot over at the quarry.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Great.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you. I won't use the microphone. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
That's usually true of professors. We tend to profess and usually profess loudly. So, but I first like to thank Celeste for inviting me. She did add the wildlife into her title of the watershed, because when she first called me, I said, I don't have anything to do with water. Why would these people be interested in what I have to say? The only thing that I can tell them about marmots and water is that marmots burn fat, as we do too, we're mammals. And when you burn fat, you produce water. So that's one good thing about hibernation, they're burning fat and they produce water, so they don't have to drink. And she said, well, that's what everybody wants to know. What marmots do. So she twisted my arm. I'm actually retired, but only recently retired. And so she's testing my waters here to see whether I even remember anything. But I did over the last 45 years as a professor. So anyway, so the title of my talk is Fit and Fat. And I thought that was kind of a cute title because when I won't say when I was growing up, I mean, you all probably, I may be older than a few of you, but when I was a graduate student, being overweight was a big deal. And we were trying to find out why is obesity such an issue in the United States and worldwide at this point. And so here, I developed this title because I said, look, these guys are fat, but they're fit. They're surviving. They're doing the right thing in being fat. So what are the characteristics of these animals, these hibernators, as I'll talk about and explain in a bit? What is the characteristics of them that allows them to be? So, as you all know, if you go to the doctor's office, there are two things that the doctor should do. Although this day and age, I'm not sure about our healthcare system, but the two things they should do.
Would you like the lights turned down?
Yeah, you probably want to turn them down just a bit. Some of the slides will be better viewed.
Are you hearing okay over this?
I don't know if I had that ability here.
Greg, I think it's up here.
It is over there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, maybe it's on that tablet.
Do demos on this. Lions, monkeys, okay.
I don't have anything here.
Now, the person who works here, Greg, always goes to that black box over there. Yeah.
Oh, the big black box. Ah, good job.
Thanks, Willard.
So, as I was saying, when you go to the doctor, he or she should definitely do two things, and usually they always do. One is they take your body temperature, and they also get your body weight, okay? Because those are the two best indices of whether you're healthy or not. You have a fever, you're overweight, etc. They suggest that there's some kind of problem going on. So I thought this was extraordinarily interesting that when the graduate student put a scale out on the Serengeti, these baboons would come and weigh themselves every year. Weigh themselves, as this to say, well, I guess I'm doing okay. But as you can see, this guy's pushing down. I think that he kind of weighs more and may not be a little off. So, but body weight and temperature are extremely important. And that's really the synthesis of how hibernators make it through the winter, how they are able to survive. So the question is that we're going to talk about tonight are why hibernate, what can we learn from animals that hibernate, and how do they do it? And please feel free to stop me and interrupt me anywhere along the course of the talk. So first I'll identify who are the hibernators, and then we'll talk about what is hibernation, and there are many definitions, and people, the general public really do get confused sometimes about what is hibernation, what is torpor, what is deep sleep with bears, all this terminology. People get confused, so I'll straighten it all out in your mind. You'll be experts by the time I'm done. And then we'll also talk about my research area. And there are three areas that we've been investigating, and I said, everything has to be in the past tense now that I'm retired. I have investigated. And I did make some discoveries, I have to say. But we'll talk about three areas in particular. The role of essential fatty acids, hibernators as an animal model of obesity, and also the regulation of bone metabolism. And these, well, all three of them really are very important in terms of human health as well. So we'll talk about those. And as I said, with questions, you can ask me, stop and answer a question anytime. It's no problem. So if we look at the phylogenetic distribution of mammals capable of torpor and hibernation, it's really quite amazing. So here we have, this is basically, here on this line would be mammalia. These are mammals, okay? And then you've got monotremes, marsupials, and Eutheria. And we are in Eutheria. We are in Eutheria. But you can see that throughout all of the class of mammalia, there are, I want to say people that hibernate, but there are animals that hibernate, okay? Well, what does that mean? It means then that since we are mammals, we should be able to hibernate, okay? That we have the genes to be able to hibernate, since all mammals share genes. Now, I have experienced that. There have been some students in the back of my class. I think they were hibernation. But I didn't get to by the temperature. So you see there, you've got monotremes, you've got marsupial, you've got bats, you've got ground squirrels, you've got marmots, you've got bears. But do they all do it the same way? No. That's what's interesting. They do their hibernation, if you will, in different ways. Okay, and we're gonna talk about all those different ways. And there even is a bird that snuck in. And because they also, four-wheel group, they also will drop body temperature when times are tough and will hibernate. Another bird, well, I'm very familiar with that actually undergoes torpor. I'll get to the definitions of them. Are hummingbirds. Right, undergo torpor. And at night, we used to watch them tank up at bird feeders and get as much sugar as they can. And then they'll go find a safe spot to go like under your house eaves or in pine trees and very dense. And they'll sit and they'll hibernate and they'll utilize the torpor to sugar water. And they can really tank up. I mean, we had a scale one time at the Rocky Mountain Biological Lab where you could watch the hummingbird feed, but the stand that was on was a scale. So we're watching the scale out the window, and this bird is drinking, and it's just like body weight just went up about 3 or 4 grams, and the birds are only 45 grams. So they really do tank up. Well, you're familiar with the Colorado hibernators, and in particular, I looked at the golden mantle ground squirrel and the yellow-bellied marmot. And the golden mantle is we defined as Callus Marmots lateralis, and the yellow-bellied marmots are always one of the adventures. Woodchucks are monax, monax, but they've never made it west of the Mississippi River. So the woodchucks are always to the east of us. However, that statement is pretty true, except that if you go way up to the Arctic, monax comes around through Canada, and there are one population of monax up in Alaska, which shares territories with the Alaska. So that's as far west as it does actually go. These guys, as I say, their summer weight is usually about 2 kilos for the marmots, but their winter weight can be as much as 10 pounds. Wow. 10 pounds and 5 kilos. So they will double their body weight, and that's primarily in the form of fat. Okay, between now, when they're just starting to come out, end of May, early June, all the way through to about September. Early September for the big males, and then later September for females and juveniles. But they will double their body weight in that period of time, which is 3 months. And then they will essentially stop eating for 7 months.
Oh.
And I mean, I have to sneak preview. I'm kind of telling you, I get so excited about it. I just can't help myself. And even my slides just have too many words. It's so important is that they really don't eat. When I tell scientists that, they're like, oh, come on, They must eat. If you put food in there occasionally, and I say, no, we've shown videos of this. They don't eat, and they gradually slow their food intake down throughout the course of the fall, until one day they just say, no, thank you, I'm good. I can make it till spring. And they stop eating, even though 4 days before or a week before they were eating. They completely stop. And they feed off their fat. So they switch from a lipogenic state, okay, where they're putting on a lot of fat, to a lipolytic state where that's all they're burning is fat. So, as I say here, hibernation. So what is that really? It's a state of inactivity brought about usually by short days, okay, short day lengths, cold temperatures, and no food in the environment. Okay, so that's what brings on hibernation. And I say that wanting to also tell you that the short day length, meaning that there's a photoperiod component to it, suggests that these guys have some kind of circadian rhythm, to hibernation. And David E. Davis actually proved that by taking woodchucks before they were about to hibernate, and he shipped them down to Australia, to a buddy in Australia. And it took 5 years for the woodchucks to switch over to the Australian winter and summer
Wow.
closure. Okay?
Wow.
So that's how we know that it was not photo period, because had it been photo period, they would have switched the first year. They would have just switched right away. Okay? But no, it took 5 years for them to finally switch over to hibernate in a proper season down in Australia. So we got plenty of cold temperatures, and since our body temperature, they are mammals, is normally around 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 or so. Cold temperatures also are a stimulus to say, hey, maybe I should be storing some food here because it's starting to get cold. And then you look around and think, well, there's no food in the environment. And so either I better have already stored my food, or I better have stored my food in the form of fat on myself. So hibernation is characterized in the animals itself by a drop in body temperature, which we call a torpor bout. We'll describe those and talk about those some more. Reduced metabolic rate. So, for example, bear or marmot will go from about 150 beats per minute down to 1 beat per minute.
Wow.
Their heart rate drops that. Their metabolism drops nearly 90%. So they are literally living on the edge, but living on a very small amount of fuel. But they drop their body temperature. They don't have a lot of fuel needs when they're in hibernation. So they survive on their energy stores such as that. And they may hibernate for several months, but people think, well, they go down underground and then that's it. Well, there's still some things going on down underground. They're still preparing the nest. They are dropping their body temperature. They're kind of attempting to drop their body temperature to see if they can really hibernate. They may store more food. They may come up the ground after 3 or 4 days just to see if things are still the way they thought they were, or did they get worse. But they will actually arouse, but not come above ground. And so they'll be awake, but they're below, like here in Estes, they're below 6 or 7 feet of snow. And they're not gonna groundhog day it. As I've always said, I've been interviewed for Channel 9 News several times. There's no way on a groundhog day that a marmot in Estes Park is gonna come up and see whether it's even shot. I'll just set that story straight, that no marmots in Colorado are coming up above ground on marmots on groundhog day to see if they can see the shadow. During winter hibernation, animals can still freeze to death. And in fact, when we have a big snowpack like we are having this year, the survival rate will be really good. Okay, and people say, wait a minute, there's a lot of snow. Snow insulates the ground. Okay, so if you've got a lot of snow, and then you finally hit ground and you go maybe 5 or 6 inches, it's warm. I mean, it literally is warm. The earth is still warming the dirt. Okay, so it will be above freezing. But if we don't get snow and the cold is, the air is hitting the ground, that frost line will go very deep. And the frost line is what kills them, because they can't maintain their metabolism for very long. They're constantly at a very low temperature or fighting a low temperature, like a frost line of maybe minus 20 degrees. So having a lot of snow really does help the marmot. Okay, so some definitions. Winter hibernation, that's our period from about October, November until about the end of March, early April. So what's happening right now? Well, they peeked out in April. They peeked up to see what was going on. And they, Max wanted to know where Shirley had her den. So they have mated already. They've mated already, usually around mid to late April, they've mated. Gestation period is about 22 days for marmots, a little less for ground squirrels. So if you count back, we probably are having marmot pups being born about now. But they won't come above ground. You won't see them. But the pups are being born about now. Same with the ground squirrels. So as my friends say, it's a big fat marmot, or it's a big fat ground squirrel. I say, either they've solved the mystery of hibernation of how to stay fat all winter long, or they're pregnant.
Yeah.
More likely, they're pregnant, just saw a big female. The big males, all of them lose about 30 to 50% of their body mass.
Wow.
But then you hear sometimes a term called summer estivation. This is what lizards do, turtles do. Okay, in certain climates. Here's where the temperature is so hot that they actually go below ground to get cool. And so the Mojave desert ground squirrel, for example, estivates. It goes down below ground, gets cool, and it only comes out at night. It will estivate for several days, but then it will come back up and look for food in the nighttime when it's cool. So you have animals that actually undergo estivation. And so estivation is a form of hibernation, but it occurs during the summertime because animals are trying to avoid the heat of the day. And we've talked about hibernation, and I'll show you some tropophiles in a minute. And torpor, however, is an interesting term because it's a decrease in body temperature, which can last hours. I.e. some of my students in class, or days or weeks, but the animals are able to still rewarm themselves back to normal body temperature. Okay, using their own heat, and that's a very important part of the definition of hibernation. Is that we talk about these animals dropping their body temperature? Yes, they do, but they have to have their own endogenous heat to rewarm themselves back up again. And we'll talk about a little bit about how they do that later. Whereas ectotherms, not endotherms, ectotherms like snakes and turtles and like that, they will estivate or go into torpor, and you find the time of year that they're trying to avoid. But they'll drop their body temperature in the cold, and they stay there at that temperature all winter long. They don't do this arousal thing. They stay in the bottom of a pond, and they hope it doesn't get too cold, all winter long. And then as the pond water and the air temperature and the soil warm up, they warm up, and they then become active again. And that's why you won't see many snakes or turtles until we're getting ambient temperatures above 60 to 70 degrees, because they're down below ground. Dormancy is what insects, and that's what we call that dormancy. Insects and ectotherms undergo. They must have the environmental heat to rewarm themselves. Whereas we endotherms, mammals, we can do it by ourselves. So are they all the same? Are bats, bears, and marmots all the same? Absolutely not. So if we start with bats, bats are really curious because they drop their body temperature and stay down at low temperature, close to ambient, for the longest period of time. People always talk about bears, but actually bats stay down for over 30 days. They can stay down for over 30 days at, say, 5 degrees Celsius, just above freezing. Ground squirrels, marmots, they go up and down usually 3 to 4 weeks. Not always 4 weeks, but 2 to 3 weeks, depends upon the environment. Bears, they undergo what a lot of people will run called torpor, because if you're a bear and you're 300 kilograms, for you out there who are mathematicians and scientists, if you do the calculation of how much heat within a gram of fat, they can't put enough fat on their body to warm themselves 30 degrees to go from, say, close to zero, all the way up to 5 degrees Celsius, all the way back up to 35. They can't do that. They can't put on like that. So how do they manage? A bear will start off at about 37, 38 degrees Celsius, but it'll only drop his body temperature about 6 to 8 degrees. And therefore his metabolism drops about 6 to 8 degrees. Now, it turns out that metabolism and body temperature are closely related. And so if you have a high metabolism, you would expect to have a high body temperature. Likewise, if you have a low metabolism, you expect that your body temperature would drop, your metabolism would drop. Well, it's true, except that bears, interestingly, their metabolism is fairly high, but they're able to inhibit their metabolism to bring it down so that the body temperature actually starts to drop and drops at 6 or 8 degrees. So what is hard conceptually sometimes to figure out is that, and the best way to show it is in the next figure here. These are dormice, European dormice, but here's what's going on. You see, as I mentioned, the heart rate is close to 1. It's extremely low. Okay, but here's ambient temperature. Okay, and is the blue. So these animals are dropping body temperature in the black all the way down to just above the ambient temperature. Okay, now, how do they do that? We believe they're able to inhibit their metabolism, because if this metabolism were up here, they couldn't drop their body temperature. They're producing too much heat. That's what metabolism does, produce a lot of heat. So they wouldn't be able to drop the temperature. So you have to drop your body temperature, i.e. your heart rate, and cellular metabolism to a low level to be able, and you have to dilate to get rid of that. And then your body temperature falls. Okay? So then your body temperature falls. And you might say, well, what happens if you hit ambient? Well, then you're a rock, you're dead. If you're the same temperature as ambient, then you didn't make it. Okay, but if you're alive, you're always producing a little bit, which keeps you above ambient. That's where they want to be. They want to be just above ambient this whole time. And you can see they track ambient the whole time that they're down in hibernation. And when I gave this talk like this to a bunch of physicians, they saw the heart rate and they said, no, that animal's dead. That's been dead, etc. I said, no, the animal's quite alive. And the EEG of the animal, the brainwave activity, was flat, absolutely flat. And the explanation is that we don't have the equipment sensitive enough to actually pick up what little neuronal activity is going on. Our equipment is not capable of picking it up. So this is really amazing what they do. So it's to kind of summarize this part. There are 2 components of hibernation. Okay, there's a seasonal component, which is summer. Animals are awake, look just like us, high temperature around 35 degrees, they're active, running around, etc. And then all of a sudden, they say, you know what? It's getting cold. And all the dandelions are gone and there's nothing to eat. I think it's time to, get a good siesta. So all of a sudden, they start do what we call hibernation, out of hibernation, which includes the descent, and then they go down, and then the arousal, where they arouse back up to euthermic body temperatures. Now, what's amazing about that is that doing that, until we put data loggers in them, we didn't realize, because we've had observations of everybody, all these animals disappeared and float down. They must be just hibernating, flat out straight hibernating. Not until we put data loggers in to find out, no, they wake up. They finish that chapter in the book they were reading a little bit, and then go back and sleep again. They literally stay awake anywhere from about 3 to 12 hours. And then they drop their body temperature again and go back down into hibernation. Okay? And then you might ask, well, first of all, why do they do this? Second of all, what happens at the end? You know, for the last talk about, well, they either they made it or and they aroused and then they look for mates because it's springtime. And this is the time that their hormone levels are going wild, and they say, you know, we should be finding our mates. So this is a great way, and this is really what hibernation is all about, and a great way to survive a period where the temperatures are cold, there's no food, okay, and you've got to make it for at least 6 or 7 months till spring becomes available. Okay. So there's a tremendous timing. And that's another reason why my colleagues and my younger colleagues are all concerned about climate change and warming, because for these guys, it's still cold outside. And so they're still trying. But if we have warming, the plants are either going to burst early or they're going to burst very late, depending on their seasonal cycle. And so the question then becomes, will these guys have any food? Because if there's global warming and warming in their area, the plants could try to start coming up too soon. These guys would be trying to hibernate and there would be a mismatch. And we'll end up with dead animals, basically. So the question then becomes, and those are the intraval arousals as I was mentioning. You know, how do we study this, and how have I studied this over these last 40 years? I hate to admit, and you would think that I would have found something significant at that time, and I did. There's some things that I'll show you that actually got a lot of press, but the fun part was going out and studying hibernation. They're only above ground for 4 to 5 months. That's it. Okay. I couldn't miniaturize myself and go down into the burrow. And believe me, we've thought of all different kinds of ways, like get a laparoscopic scope to go down and look and see what's going on. And my buddy in Alaska did that, and the ground squirrels and marmots shoved dirt against it. They couldn't see what was going on. It's like privacy issues. And but what we do still is go out and get field observations about their behavior, their diet, etc. We do field experiments where we can put data loggers in their abdomen that will record their body temperatures, etc. We now also have light loggers we can put at the entrance of the burrow, and therefore when they go in and out, it triggers the fact that these guys have been going in and out of the burrow. And then we bring them in the lab and we study their patterns in the lab where we have a little more control. We can do hormone injections, we can do temperature manipulations, etc. So I'll show you a few quick pictures here. This fun part of being a professor, you get to take your students out in the field and show them things, and they're like, ooh, wow, I didn't know that. So you get to go out in the field, and several times we've come up to Estes Park and other areas. You might even recognize some of the areas in the slides. Where we're able to make observations, because that's how you develop hypotheses. So what are these animals doing? Well, we observe them, we think, well, maybe they're storing food, or maybe they're dropping the body. Then at some point, we either have to bring them into the lab, or we have to do manipulation to be able to try to answer our hypothesis, test their hypothesis. So here we had done a diet and territory selection in ground squirrels, and this is actually up at Red Feather Lakes, which was great for me because my buddy of mine was a member of the Red Feather Lakes community and the golf course up there, and they had a ground squirrel problem and a marmot problem. And their golf balls are going into holes that were not necessarily there. As well as the fact that their grass was being eaten, and the cats were being eaten by coyotes and badgers, which would come on the golf course because the marmots were there, et cetera. So, we didn't have a marmot problem, we called Florant. So they called me, got carte blanche permission to go on this very fancy, if you've been there, golf course and trap marmots and tag marmots. And my graduate students just loved it because nobody bothered our traps. Everybody was like, go get them, go get them. So we got to study them. So we had eye buttons and data loggers, and we could track them. We could figure out where they were, how old they were, etc. I got, well, I did. My students got a couple of 3 Ph.D. theses out of this. So that was really nice. And then I had the undergraduates were usually regulated to trapping, and so they were out trapping, and they were a little upset because I paid my daughter a couple dollars for trapping a ground squirrel, and she got $10 if she got a marmot. So undergraduates, they had to do it for nothing. They had to do it. And occasionally we get an interrover like a badger or a fox, who would come in and want to get the food. And that's if I have time or we get to a spot where I feel like I have time, that's a whole other story. How do you trap a marmot? Most people who try to trap them have been unsuccessful. And I developed a bait that just marmots could not resist. And that really got my whole PhD. That actually got my thesis and my PhD started when I was at Stanford University, because my advisor could not trap marmots. Ground squirrels. And he worked on ground squirrels. And when I told him I was going to work on marmots, he said, well, good luck. I hope your fellowship and your sponsor has a lot of money for you, because I only trapped one marmot every 15 years. So that's you, I'm me, I'll figure out how to do it. And the short story of it is that when I went out with an undergraduate through, we were trapping in Boca Yosemite, and I said, if I just been in hibernation all winter long, and I come out of hibernation, I don't want peanut butter, and I don't cigarettes, I don't lettuce. I want something fatty. I want bacon. I want fried chicken. I want that on me again. And so, long story short, I set a bunch of traps with bacon grease and dandelions, with a couple of dandelions, so they could really see the dandelions were there. And that weekend, when I went trapping, I caught 30 marmots. I had lots of fascinating stories about the marmots actually fighting to get into the trap. They were like, and everybody loves bacon. Everybody loves bacon. So we studied them in the field, we studied them in the lab, and so here's a big difference that we discovered, and we have to reconcile. When you're in the field, look at the length of these crocodiles. For the whole 6 to 7 months, you had 1, 2, 3, 9 crocodiles. 7 months. That's almost taking down a whole month. Okay, so if they're in the field, they aren't disturbed, and they really hibernate extremely well. And by this I mean the crocodiles are long. They follow the ambient temperature, as you can see. They go right down, right close to 0, but not to 0. Whereas in the lab, every Sally, Connie, and Joe wants to see my ground squirrels, wants to see my marmots. They're coming into the cold room, the door opens, temperature changes, everything else. They hibernate, but look, it's almost double. So the field, as you can see, the field animals do a lot better than the lab animals. They do, and they have to, because they're not gonna get food. Because the, animal care committee says, well, your animals, losing weight, you better give us some food. And they're out in the field, that's it, they've got to survive off their fat.
So with the ones that are coming out of the hibernation more often, obviously it takes a lot of energy to come out each time. Would they come out at a lower weight than the
Yes,
other ones?
these guys came out at a much lower weight. Okay, than these guys. Okay, and they also came out, in certain cases, they actually came out earlier. These guys would stay down longer, out in the field.
That would be a second question. So what's the trigger for them to finally come out of?
Boy, if you knew that, I know that. We have no idea. We actually have no idea what triggers these arousals. And people have tested everything from water deprivation, putting urine in their bladder, catheterizing them, putting urine in their bladder, catheterizing them and putting different molecules in their blood. We've done, I mean, if you have a full bladder, don't you have to get up to pee? No, they didn't. It was absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. And we don't know, we still don't know. See, and it's called the mystery of the arousal. But
So is that the case with the final arousal in the spring too?
now you're. So when we start to look at the spinal arousal, there are some physiological and biological differences that in each animal that we know. Number one, their testosterone has gone up, their estrogen has gone up. And so they are anticipating that it's going to be time for spring to mate. And so there are some good experiments where if you inject a male, for example, here with testosterone, you won't hibernate anymore. He'll say, well, wait, something's missing. Where's the females? And so we do know that hormones will alter the hibernation cycle. Okay? But how it actually triggers it, we don't know in terms of the brain mechanisms.
Yeah, or what is it?
Yeah,
It's the hormone cycle.
So you can wake them up. So you can wake them up with testosterone, wake them up by handling. You can wake them up, lots of it. And sometimes, like with testosterone, you can keep them awake for long periods of time. But why is the big question? And what is actual trigger in the field and in the lab? So we do lab work. We do body composition. One of my students, Leslie, was measuring their body composition in a composition analyzer machine. We put in a data logger in this little guy, let him go out in the field. I'm putting data loggers in marmots there in that picture, and ground squirrels that run around. We give them lots of food, and same with the marmots. And sometimes when we have a litter born in the lab, we'll have all three of them together, have them all together, and they feel a little more cozy that their brethren are with them. And so we begin to study and look at dietary choices, we look at behavior, we look at hormone levels and body temperature. This is an interesting animal. It was in the field. She was 18 years old. We knew because she had an ear tag on her. There's a little ear tag here on her. Pictures a little, and she was an animal that another field researcher was studying. So when I gave him the tag number, he said to me, that can't be. That animal's still alive? I said, yeah, she's right up there on the hillside in that burrow. And she did. She had a great burrow. She had a great burrow. And in the spring, when they come out, they're very lean. And their body mass has really gone down. Everybody asked me, are they really that tame? Like, in the spring. No, they are. We have to knock them out. But there's an idea of what they look like in the fall. with the fat cats, the body fat is tremendous. I mean, they just really have stored up on fat. And if we look at their, what's called the respiratory quotient, their R2, they're burning totally fat. They're not burning glucose like most mammals do. I mean, we burn glucose a lot of the time, and then if you work hard enough, you start to burn fat. All the doctors are always telling you to do. You gotta work out more than 20 minutes, otherwise you're not burning fat. But these guys, they get just terribly fat. And we were able to show that this is a circadian cycle with them, because if you look at the graph here, going from May through May and back to January again, you look at the size of the fat cells, they get huge. I mean, this is the same magnification all the way through. And their body mass is doing this, and their fat cells are doing that. The fat cells are getting huge at the same time. And so what we have, as I mentioned this, is a circadian movement where in the summer, starting out now, June, July, they are eating. This is the fattening phase. In the fall, somewhere within 4 to 6 weeks, then they start to prepare for hibernation. But they'll hibernate all the way to the following April, March, April. Yeah. And now they'll undergo reproduction, and this is where the God line, depends on whether food is available, they begin to feed. So this is a circadian rhythm, and I call it circadian rhythm in that it's a year rhythm versus a circadian rhythm, the 24-hour. And so this is a circadian rhythm, and as I mentioned, when you ship them off to Australia, it takes 5 years for them to finally flip over to the life cycle and photo period. So as you see, their body mass is primarily fat. Here's a not reporting arrows when they start to have. Look at that, they just immediately lose fat mass until they start to feed again in the spring and summer. And they do that year after year after year for well, marmots can live up to 15, 20 years. Now, this is where the astute graduate student that I was, I got dumber according to my children since then. This is where I said, well, wait a minute. If fat is so important, what's the composition of the fat? What kind of fat are we talking? We're talking about saturated fats, monoglycerols, polyunsaturates, or what? And does the kind of fat matter? And particularly given the diet these animals are. So I decided that the essential fatty acids must be what these animals are chewing in on, because essential means that they can't be made by the body. So they have to get certain fatty acids from their diet, including linoleic acid and linoleic acid. And we're the same way. You hear this in the news media all the time. You gotta get your polyunsaturates, you gotta get your linoleic acid or linoleic acid. So you gotta eat green vegetables, nuts, etc., to get those fatty acids, because we can't make them either. So those must be included in the diet. Why do they have to be included? Because they are actually involved with reproduction and recognize acid, involved with reproduction and membrane function. HDA or hibernonic acid is involved with vision. You need that for vision. So these are acids you have to get from the diet, and you can't make them. But once they're there in the diet, they are involved with prostaglandins, all kinds of different hormones that are important to be able to survive. Okay, so I said, well, what happens? Typical biologists and biologists, we always have to take something away or give something so we can test our hypothesis. So in this case, I said, well, what happens if we take away the essential fatty acids? So I gave marmots a control diet, which had all of that they need. And then I gave some animals, action group, a EFA, essential fatty acid free diet. And then I watched, because I was worried that, well, maybe they'll eat different and they'll feed different. So I recorded food intake, day number, and started right before hibernation. So they didn't eat very much. And then when they woke up in spring, I noticed that the two diets were exactly the same. So these animals, both the control and the EFA animals, have started both with low body mass in the spring, gave them food, they started to eat, so that by the following winter, one group would not have the essential fatty acids, or very much of them, and the other group would have the control diet of regular fatty acids. So when and just to really sort of put the nail in the coffin on this, I was lucky, I trapped two females who both had 4 babies. And so I used them in the experiment. So I had matching control groups where the babies from one group, I could have 2 as control and 2 as EFA, and they were related. So I had the control for them. So that was great. So I had a pretty good size N, and I could control for the fact that these were different marmots, in the sense that they were, these guys were all genetically the same. So the marmots control diet hibernated twice as long as the animals on the EFA deficient diet. And and again, remember, these were matching animals. And look, over 10 of them, including the siblings. And this is one of the big papers that made a big splash, because what this basically means is that look at the average balance, it's 11 days, almost the same as a female. Yet if they have a EFA deficient animals, that means they didn't have linoleic acid, their balance was less than half, basically, of what the control animals were. And so the question then becomes, well, what does that mean? And I say to my students, well, what do you think it means? And some would say, well, those guys arouse more frequently. So if it takes energy to arouse, as we just said, go from 5 degrees up to 36 to 37 degrees multiple times. What's happening with the EFA deficient animals? They're burning a lot of energy. Yeah, in fact, they're burning twice what the field animals would. So if you don't get enough fat on you, what's going to happen? You die. That's right. You die. So I was going at this from a physiological point of view, and Ken Armitage, who was at Kansas State University, he had published a bunch of work because he's more of a field ecologist, and he said, well, marmots have basically 7, 9 favorite plant species, and I said to him, I'll bet you doubtless students that their favorite plant species have a lot of essential fatty acids. In fact, I'll bet you that there's probably 1 or 2 plants that they specialize on to get their essential fatty acids. So we did then a double-blind experiment where I didn't know what they were feeding, what the animals had fed on. People didn't know, we didn't know what gut samples, what animals, etc. And lo and behold, we found that the plant species that the marmots preferred to eat was the same one that has the highest 18.2 and 18.3 of all of their favorite. And so we here down in Colorado, everybody thought, ooh, wow, this is big news, this is great news. And it was. And it was all published and it made the news. And when I gave the same seminar last year, the guys up there, particularly the physiologists, they all looked at me and said, well, of course, the marmots are eating calamars. Is it, first of all, it's the first plant to come above ground because it's got so many essential fatty acids, it's unsaturated. So it's the first comes up. And I was like, yeah, well, yeah, but it, all the reindeer know that, all the caribou know it, all the bears know it, everybody up there in Alaska, where it really makes it cold. They said, yeah, the cow parsnip, they weren't surprised, but they were a little surprised. Some of them, you know, look at the next best one is, guess what flower that is? It's dandelions. Dandelion wine tastes good, dandelion tastes good, salad, etc. They are also essential fatty acids. Okay, and they're the second best. So I was able to show that essential fatty acids really were important to the hibernation cycle, that the animals were selectively feeding on it, particularly here in Rocky Mountains. And yes, it is one of the first plants to come above ground because it's polyunsaturated, which means that it's more fluid. Again, you know, dealing with undergraduates, I had to say, okay, you've got a can of Crisco, and you got a jar of olive oil. Which one is going to be solid at what temperature? Now, I give you a hint. This one is already solid. And Crisco is saturated. So, again, my students learned that, yeah, polyunsaturates, they stay there and essential fatty acids are actually good. And actually, when I published this, it turned out that several other folks started to jump on the bandwagon, and now you see that there are several other authors who, for their ground squirrel or dormouse, or chipmunks, or even peromyscus, your deer mice that are running around in your house that you should try to get out a lot of the time, all of them feed on essential fatty acids, particularly in the late fall, to be able to get it. Another plant food that's full of polyunsaturated fatty acids is sunflower seeds, all the seeds. And that's why chipmunks, ground squirrels, everybody needs seeds because it's high in essential fatty acids. Now, what's also interesting is that you don't need very much. You only need about 2 to 4% of your fat to be have polyunsaturated fatty acids in to be able to survive. So they're eating a lot of that are monounsaturated and some saturated stuff. So they, you know, coconut oil has got a lot of saturated fat in it as the fish. So you vary your diet. But it's interesting that if you look at torpor or hibernation bowel in these animals, you see that the amount of polyunsaturated fatty acid alters their body temperature, alters their ability to withstand cold temperatures. And that actually has been shown in humans as well. It's actually been shown in some of the yogis and humans in India who are able to lower their body temperature, that their body fat composition is different than what most people have. So that was one of the highlights of my career. What I did was to understand how fatty acids work. And then we went to, well, the animals are fat, right? So why don't they show obesity? Why don't they show insulin resistance? Why don't they show all the same issues that humans do? And so we looked at hyperinsulinemia, we looked at hyperglycemia, we looked at peripheral insulin resistance in these guys, in marmots per se. And as this should be familiar to most, but as you know, your pancreas produces insulin. Insulin helps your muscles in particular, and also your fat cells take up glucose, which is then converted to fat. Glucose also shuts down, releases glucose from the liver, which actually stores your 20 minutes of exercise glucose. This is where that comes from, is from the liver. It drains it. So we were asking ourselves that, what were the levels of insulin, glucose, etc., in these animals as they go through their hibernation cycle? Well, plasma insulin is clearly an indicator that these guys are suffering from obesity and they are as they start to put on the insulin levels go sky high, sky high. Now you might say, well, but wait, they're still fat in October and December. Why isn't insulin high then? Because they stop eating. You don't seem to be able to do. So that's exactly what happens. And these guys stop eating and their insulin levels go back down to normal. And their metabolism is low. Their body temperature is close to 5 degrees. Their metabolism is 100th of what it was during the summer. So they're basically capitalizing on all this fat and burning it very slowly all winter long, but they're not eating. And we actually did several studies which showed that their gut just goes down to nothing. It shrinks to a very paper thin gut. Why waste energy keeping your gut going if you're not putting anything in it? So they reduce all of their metabolic needs. Then if we look at insulin levels, when you do a glucose challenge in marmots, it's just like what happens with humans. In the fall, when they're really fat, the insulin levels spike and go up. The rest of the year, it follows during summer, following normal level. So they basically should have diabetes. They should be diabetic. But as I say, what happens, and then here's the fall insulin levels. We did an injection, and you would expect the insulin to lower the glucose. In the fall, you get a spike in the insulin, really high, but you see you get very little fall. It's like it's inactive. So which is typical of a diabetic. The insulin stops working. So this said to me, the NIH, National Institute of Health, should be giving us lots of money to be able to try to understand this. Unfortunately, that was not the case. I did get one grant from NIH, but most of my grants were from the National Science Foundation. But we thought this was just a heck of a good model for people to study. At this point now, with all the genomics and proteomics that we have, I think somebody could really go to town and really be able to understand why, in fact, these animals are not diabetic. And I was saying to somebody earlier that I'm a comparative physiologist. I use these animal models to try to understand our physiology as well as animal physiology. And somebody asked me one time, well, is there an exception to this? And it turns out there is. And of course, where would it be but in Southern California? Where the beachy eye, the California ground squirrel, people feed them so much during the winter and the summer that they actually get diabetes. All the feeding, it actually over the years of feeding and time, they actually are insulin sensitive and get diabetes. Okay, my last research project, which I just recently finished with colleague of mine who's now with UMass Amherst. And his student, because of COVID and lots of other things, she didn't get a dissertation done right away, which took a little while. But I say this because I just got off the phone with her 3 days ago when she finally defended her thesis, which was great. And she looked at why don't marmots lose bone mass during hibernation. Here you got an animal, curls up as you saw it, just sits there for literally weeks. I was in the hospital for a week and I lost bone mass and muscle mass and everything. You lose it so quickly, it makes your head spin when a human is bed rested. You just can't believe it. Not to mention all the estrogen changes that go on with both men and women, where bones become very fragile. My mother used to say, she got to her elder age, don't fall. Not fall. That's the thing that you tell all our elderly friends, particularly women. So your bones are disintegrating if you stay down as long as these guys. So apparently this doesn't happen. And this is what Emily Cravens did. So we've been through this. They hibernate up to 8 months of the year. Metabolic rates are 2 to 5%. And they drop to nothing. Core temperature drops near freezing. Droughts last weeks, etc. So what happens to cortical bone? Okay, so here's cortical bone, and my buddy is a biomechanical engineer, so he was looking to get all these marmot bones from getting for bones from testing and see if they broke it, everything. So, you know, I was thinking, you think pregnant with disease. Here we looked at the chemical property of cortical bone, which is working right at the beginning. I'm not a mechanical engineer, so if somebody's in the audience is a mechanical engineer, they can preempt me on what exactly these machines all do. But they're basically testing the tensile strength of the bones, both the cortical and the trabecular bone. We look at trabecular bone, which is closer to the head, up there, up to the head. You see how it looks, how it's supposed to look like that. And there's still some fat in there, so you see the fat. And like that in the bone. And when we look at cortical bone geometry, strength, and mineralization, completely unaffected by hibernation. There it is. Completely unaffected. And look at been in hibernation for months, and the bones are solid as to be. And we just didn't know what was going on, and that's where. So Beth and I put our heads together and we thought, well, it must be something in the blood, must be that's circulating, that's interacting with the bone. And so we looked at, again, long stories, we looked at endocannabinoids and some other factors. And in fact, they are changing in such a way as to preserve, because we've got the dynamics of remodeling, making it and breaking it down. So those two have to balance each other. Keep your bone the same, right? Exactly. You have both processes going on in your body. So here, Arctic ground squirrel. We looked at lots of different animal species: bears, Arctic ground squirrels, marmots, etc. Trabecular bone volume, not adversely affected by hibernation. A little bit higher than hibernation, a little bit better. Certainly not worse. It's absolutely minimal. Same with cortical bone in marmots. Again, post hibernation was actually a little bit better in the stress test than before. And we looked at marmot trabecular bone, not adversely affected by it. Again, post hibernation almost was significantly higher in terms of bone volume, being actually a little greater. But it was basically still about the same. Which means that the bone volume and the strength are preserved when these animals are sitting in their nest, doing nothing, reading a book, wherever, down in hibernation, and their bone mass is fine. And you know, you have to think why. they're under, what, 6, 8 feet of snow, no badger's gonna get them, no bear's gonna get them. You know, so they don't need to run. So, why keep their strength like that? And we just don't know, except for the fact that we know that the endocannabinoids, CB1 and CB2 play a role, and EA1 and EA2 play a role. These are hormones that are circulating at the same time, and they are doing what they're supposed to be doing to preserve bone, meaning that if there's bone degradation, the other hormones are increasing the mass of the bone to compensate for whatever loss there was. Whereas in humans, if you look at humans, that's not the case. Those same hormones aren't acting in a way to balance bone strength. Okay, I've kept you long enough. The take home message. Fatty acids certainly have a profound effect on torpor, patterns, and metabolism. Hibernators show the same consequences of human obesity, except they stop eating. So all the way up to the time that they stop eating, they should be getting diabetes. They've got insulin resistance. They've got high glucose, but they don't suffer from it. All of a sudden, in the cage or in the field, they say, I'm good. You make it to spring, I can't eat anymore, which is a whole other interesting area. How in the fall do they know how much fat they should put on and make it to the following April? Okay, there's a real brain twister. Okay, now we all thought that the woodchuck and Marmot Day or Groundhog Day would tell us, but it doesn't. No changes in bone mass, suggesting that they have a unique way of preserving bone strength the whole time that they are bed rested down in that burrow. Okay, and so I believe we have a lot to learn, and we can use animals like this to understand different human physiologies and human pathologies that we need to understand if we're going to move forward as a society. Thank you.
Yeah, well, this was fantastic. I learned it. I feel like I attended your biology class. Well, thank you for coming. Yep.
So, Rocky Mountain National Park, you see a sign that says, don't feed the animals, and there's a Texas tourist right next to the sign, feeding animals.
I know.
We should make it second to your.
I yell at the tourists. Particularly since there's a big difference. You see the tourists up there feeding them, and they're feeding them Cheetos. You know, now they're feeding them good nuts or, you know, some kind of good hearty nut. I wouldn't get, you know, so upset. But they're feeding them Cheetos, they're feeding them ham sandwiches,
Gum.
you know, all this other stuff that they don't need. And they come to think that they're always going to get it, which is what's changing their behavior, which is what then makes it bad with the animal. It's not that they can't utilize the food, yes, they can, but again, they're not getting the natural foods like the essential fatty acids necessarily, unless you're giving them good nuts and sunflower seeds and like that. They're not getting the real food that they need to be able to survive, as you've seen, to survive the winter hibernation period.
Problem with them attending your lecture, you probably set the back row.
That's right.
Yeah.
You want to say, didn't I teach you anything?
Mentioned that brainwaves go really low.
Really flat.
Do you think marmots dream when they're in torpor?
Well, I haven't asked them lately. But every time that I had animals that I could release, I'm sure they went back into the wild and said, you won't believe the winter I had. The food was great, but they kept probing me and blood from me. You know, I don't know whether they dream, although when we did long enough recordings, we did see hippocampal activity, which was pretty high. And my advisor, my PhD advisor, he actually studied the sleep cycles, because that was the other question we had, which he was very interested in. And that was part of my associating myself with my advisor when I graduated. He was going very neural and into sleep. And I said, well, I want to get into the blood and guts of it. So I went with insulin and insulin regulation and fast cell tablets when I left. But in terms of the sleep cycles, once their body temperature drops below 15 degrees Celsius, sleep cycles just disappear. Can't tell. You can't tell whether they're in sleep, dreaming, or whatever. But it's a good question. When they come back up, they do REM rebound. So they do rebound once they come back up for the arousal. So of course, everybody was thinking the arousal's there because you need to sleep. You got to wake up to sleep. And not really true. Didn't pan out. But they do have a significant increase in REM when they wake up.
You had said that their heart rate drops to 1 beat per minute. You would think that possibly their blood would collapse.
Yeah, you would think so, but again,
The arousal.
arousal helps, but the other thing is that I did do a blood study. Because I thought the same thing. I'm like, well, what happens? And there are a couple observations that I didn't mention, I should mention. One was when I did a fellowship in Germany, we were looking at brown adipose tissue. Brown adipose tissue is the little thermos that they have in their axillary regions and around their thoracic regions in their heart. And it produces heat. Its sole purpose as a tissue is to produce heat. And how does it do it? It takes those fatty acids that we've been talking about and it breaks them down so that you produce your water. Gotta get water in my tongue. Water. But that also produces ATP and produces heat. When we break it down, when a marmot breaks it down, instead of producing any ATP, it just produces heat. So there's the brown adipose tissue has a protein in it that short circuits the normal ATP producing cycle. So that instead of making ATP, it's a fetal cycle, and they just burn the fat, and it produces a lot of heat. And brown adipose tissue is what the animals use from about, well, close to 0 degrees, 5 degrees, all the way up to about 15 to 16 degrees. And then shivering. Then they can start to shiver. And that's when I discovered that that's when the blood flow goes out to the periphery. So during that time when they're in deep hibernation, all their blood is between the heart, brown adipose tissue, liver, and lungs. That's it.
Not brain?
Goes up to the brain, but not as much as you would have thought. It's really quite interesting. But as soon as they start to arouse, then it's brain, heart, brown adipose tissue. And the brain's going now till brown adipose tissue is producing heat and warming up the blood. And then it starts to slowly get out into the periphery and into the muscles. So I used to take this into the Poudre school district all the time. I'd bring the animals in on Groundhog Day so the kids could hold them and everything. And they couldn't believe this animal was, so cold. I said, yeah, it's really cold. It's down around 5 degrees. And you watch it, as it did over the last period, it will warm up. And I always said, don't put your fingers in their mouth. When they're at 2 degrees, yes, they can't bite. There's no blood in their muscles. They're not awake, they're not, so to speak, they're not biting. But as soon as they get up to about 17 degrees, you got an animal that's ready to bite. Because it's wondering, where the heck am I? Who did this to me? And so the blood comes out to the periphery once they get above about 17 degrees. And otherwise, it's all compacted And doesn't have to, they don't have to worry about it coagulating, because it's, so, even though it's so concentrated, it's cold. It's extremely cold. And, so the, proteins are not coagulating at all during that time period. It's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, you know, you cut them, they don't bleed, so we get up to about 30 degrees.
Huh. Huh. Well, this was fascinating.
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I can talk all night.
Just regarding the feeding of the animals, I was wondering about, like, if you're feeding like nuts in the summertime, that's not a food that they would normally be getting in the summertime. Normally they'd be eating the green
The green plants, right,
instead, and then in the, later in the fall, they would be eating.
right, late summer, when they usually pick up the seeds. A lot
Right.
more, right, exactly.
So that could be another reason not to feed them.
Exactly, and they'll eat the flowers all summer long, as different flowers, come about, you know, and blossom during the, summer months and spring months, and that's why the cow parsnip was so interesting, because it was one of the first to come above ground. And so it was like a little pill of polyunsaturated fatty acids, and by the time April or by the time May or June got there, their flowers were out. So, and they were going to start to go to seed, so they were getting those nutrients a lot earlier, when they were around areas that had the cow parsnip. And even today, when you go hiking, you'll see the cow parsnip is all dried up. It's time you go hiking in June and July, the cow parsnip is down, and now you're just starting to get the other flowers coming forward.
Question. So do marmots have hyperphagia like bears do?
Do they have to do?
Hyperphagia where in the fall they're just eating machine?
Well, yeah, from basically July through early September, these animals are going to double to triple their body mass, and it's going to be mostly, as I showed, in the form of fat. So you'll see them feed and then go lie on a rock. They are couch potatoes. They are not going to be active at all. They do not want to be active. That would burn up their fat. They don't want to be active at all. And that's what happens is that if you think about the reproductive cycle, they breed in the sort of late spring, and the pups come above ground. And so the females put all this energy in the pups. So they are fairly lean. The males, you know, basically sperm donors. And then afterwards, they start eating and eat. So who's the fat? Who gets fat first? The males. Okay, so the males, and not the young males, but the adult ones, they'll get fat first. So by early August, they're gone. They're below ground. They don't want to subject themselves to predation. So they go below ground. Next in line are the adult females that didn't breed, 2-year-olds, usually 1 or 2-year-old females. They breed, marmots will breed out in 3 years. So the females that didn't breed are the next to go down. They're gone usually by the end of August. So then you have the juveniles and the females that bred. They're competing for food above ground in September and October. Okay. And the young of the year, they're born that year, they must get from, they're born at about 200 grams. They have to get up to at least 1 kilogram with that to be able to make it. Now, the good news is they get to 1 kilogram, they still hibernate with mom. So they're down in the burrow with mom, and they all huddle together. I got lots of stories about that, because in the European one, all of the males, females, and they're all hibernate together in a big, huge hibernaculum. And there could be 100 animals. And all the babies are in the center, and the adults are on the outside, keeping the babies warm and protected. And so they have, imagine that they have a synchronous arousal. Stop moving, you're waking everybody up. All of a sudden, all of them will start to pick up. They get too much food, but they all hibernate together. Yellow bellies here in Colorado, yes, the mom and the babies hibernate together, the males hibernate by themselves. And then the babies will usually make it through the winter if they've got mom there with them.
I understand about the gut shutting down because they were stopping to eat and getting smaller, but is there anything that happens with their kidneys? I mean, do they have to keep operating certain organs during that time, or do they just, everything just shuts down?
Everything shuts down. You don't eat, you don't drink, you don't, you're not producing, any, urine, for that matter. Your metabolism, and I should say, their metabolism is such that, and again, that's for marmots. There are other species of hibernators that will produce urine, and bears, they don't eat or drink, and they don't poop during hibernation. They've been studied extensively because they're so big. So metabolically, why don't they produce urine? Okay, and they would drop their body temperature 6 degrees, so from 37 to 30 or so. Whereas a marmot drops all the way down to 5. So you wouldn't expect the metabolism at 5 is not going to produce, much urine, maybe a drop. That's about it. But bears, you'd expect there to be a problem. Again, why do we compare the physiologists, study these guys to find out, well, how do they do it? Bears can recycle urea. And so if they produce urine, it's converted to urea. It's then reabsorbed back from the bladder back into the gut. And then it can be actually used to make proteins.
Well, don't give it away. Our next talk is about bears.
Yeah, so now you guys are all really educated. So you can ask them, whoever the speaker is, you can say, well, how far down do bears go? If they say 30 degrees, you can say, shame on you. No, it's only about 6 to 8 degrees.
Did you become attached to any animals? I mean.
Oh, golly, that's another long one. Yeah, there's always a marmot. There's always a marmot that you can't wait to kill. Can't wait to get rid of it. I mean, you open the cage door and it stands there, right? It says, you want a piece of me? Then there are the marmots, and I had one named Baby, and that's actually a picture of him.
Oh.
And he was born in love. He became like a pet. He would sit on my shoulder when I go to classes with students, and he just became a real pet. And when he got to be pretty old, I petitioned the Division of Wildlife to keep him as an educational animal. And because we didn't want to do any more experiments on him. And they said, fine, you can keep him as an educational animal. So he lived to be 14 years old. And I actually had said I would retire if he became. It was within 2 years. And now I actually got him, and he's at home. Couldn't get it done. He's at home.
Permanent hibernation.
Yeah. But you do. Another story was when I was a graduate student when I first started, and yeah, you start to get attached to them because they do really have personalities. And so when I did my studies and I had to do my figures, I didn't have figures with just said 1, 2, or 3. It had Michael Marmot, Mary Marmot, Mickey Marmot, etc. And I submitted my paper for publication, and the editor said, "You cannot personalize." And because they did. And there were several ones, so my students, and that's what I have to warn my students, I have to say, do not get attached to them, because they're gonna make you cry. They'll make you cry.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong. And inevitably, experiment would go wrong, but not often. And the other issue that I fought with the DOW about, and well, with the Colorado State's Animal Care and Use Committee, is being able to release them back in the wild. And say, look, we did the experiments worked, the animals got the catheter out, the eye buttons out. We're gonna put them back in the wild. So I've been putting them back in the wild. And then they they told me I couldn't do it anymore. They said because the animals that had been in the lab could have contracts that they would take to the field. And I hummed and hawed and said, well, just don't tell me she does it. We had to stop letting them go into the field, which then made it imperative that we only trap animals that we really were going to use for long-term experiments. Because we just, I was, my heart was just flooding. And I felt like after I retired, I went out in the field. I was sitting actually up in the Rocky Mountain National Park, and a ground squirrel came and sat next to me. And they said, "Heard you raised the white flag." That's, I said, yeah, I did. You know, he was like, well, come on, feed me. I'm, wait for some nuts. Yeah. Good nuts with sunflower seeds, because that's what I use for traps, in your pocket. And I said, no, it was late. Shouldn't be hibernating that. You do, you get really, and they can, and they make good pets. That's at the beginning, in half the year.
Yeah.
Oh, but if you got somebody coming to your house and they look at the refrigerator and say, "Ah." That's very involved. You got some complaining. But they do make actually pretty good pets.
I wish I could go back to school again. Well, folks, I'll let you go.